Hi, it's Jack, and this is the podcast version of this episode. If you want to read the words as they're being analysed, then if you're on Spotify, you can become a subscriber of this channel or head over to the YouTube channel. And on both platforms, you can also sign up to get exclusive episodes and early access to the regular weekly episodes too. Sherri Papini tells lies. Now, that's not a controversial statement. She's done time for lying. She now has a new story and she says this is the truth. But she's still lying, as we'll see in this episode. In fact, she gives the game away with what she says here. Can you spot it?
The only person that holds that piece is James. And, he has an objective to not implicate himself as well. So it's highly unlikely we're ever going to get the truth of the story.
The new lies of Sherri Papini exposed in this episode from Never a Truer Word, where we look at the words that people choose to use to see if they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. What I do here is different from anywhere else because I just take away everything apart from the words someone says and then break them down using my process of statement investigation to find the deception, to find the truth, and maybe even the motivations of the person as well. It's a process that I use with investigators, with corporate clients, and the media as well to get a deep understanding of what is being said. So, Sherri's story. Many people asked me to look at her new interview. To recap very quickly, in 2016, she claims she was abducted when she was out for a run. She was held captive for 3 weeks by two Hispanic women who tortured her. She turned up 3 weeks later and told her story. Investigators then found that actually she was just spending those 3 weeks with her ex-boyfriend, a guy called James, and she was jailed for lying in that investigation. Now, Sherri is telling us that, I was abducted, but by James. It was James that abducted me. That is her new story. She did a new interview this week with the Seriously podcast. So many people got in touch and said, please, can you break that down? It's a very long podcast. I just needed to look at 10 minutes to find all the lies. Now let's talk about the ways a really good liar lies, because listen, to tell a lie is extremely difficult. You've got the truth in your head, you've got the lie you made up in your head, but you have to cover off every angle of the lie. It's really easy to get caught, especially in a big and complex lie. So if you want to deceive, if you're a master deceiver, it's much better to stick to the truth as much as you can, because the truth is really, really easy to tell compared to a lie. And that's what we're going to see Sherri do here. So let's dive into the interview and listen to question number 1.
Hi, Sherri. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So in your recent docuseries, you discussed the 2016 abduction. And what was once said was a hoax, you say was not a hoax. It actually did happen. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Well, I think that the primary objective for me is to be able to tell my side of the story. And my federal charge is for lying to a federal officer. It is not for faking a kidnapping. And it's really important to understand that while there's narratives spinning out there that I've changed the story, I've never changed the story other than the identity of the person that held me captive. I've always maintained that I was held against my will and kidnapped and tortured. The details of that have never changed. I was just too afraid to come out with the identity of the person that held me captive.
So much in that first answer, and I'm going to delve into it deeply here. The question asked by Annie, the presenter. In your recent docuseries, you discussed the 2016 abduction, and what was once said was a hoax, you say was not a hoax. It did actually happen. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? And Sherri's answer is just laden with deception. She starts with, well. If you're a regular here, you'll know exactly where I'm going with well. If this is brand new to you, if you're into the Sherri Papini story, then let me tell you about when someone starts an answer to a question with the word well. It means they're not going to directly answer the question. They're sending you a flag that says, what's coming next is a little bit unexpected. It's not quite what you're looking for. Instead of just listening to your question and answering it, I'm going to give you an explanation. So what's coming is not really what you're looking for, it's what I want to say here. And we flag that with well. It's kind of like shorthand for, well, what you need to understand when you're doing all of this and asking all this question is some other stuff, some background, some context that's more important for me to say than for me to answer your question. So we have well. I think that the primary objective for me is to be able to tell my side of the story, is what she said. One sentence in, let's break that down. I think that the primary objective for me, so what she's doing straight away is flagging up, I'm not going to answer your question, I'm going to tell you what is important to me, my primary objective. So Annie has asked, can you talk to us a little bit about why you're now saying this was not a hoax or you were abducted? And Sherri is saying, look, I'm going to tell you my primary objective. This is manipulation, because it's coming not from the question that you've asked, but from the story that I want to tell. And this is an indicator that Sherri has gone in with some pre-prepared things that she wants to say in this interview, and therefore what she's saying is, well, I'm not going to answer your question, I'm going to go on to the things that I have prepared, that I am ready to say. The primary objective for me is to be able to tell my side of the story. So Sherri is saying right here, this is all about me. The primary objective for me is to be able to tell my side of the story. So this is Sherri saying, oh, look, I'm the number one priority here. Sherri Papini, I am the number one priority here. Interestingly, the impression that she wants to give is that I'm here to tell the truth. But she doesn't say that I'm here to tell the truth. She doesn't say the primary objective for me is to tell the truth, to get the truth across, to get the truth out there. It's to tell my side of the story. And you'll notice there, it's just my side of the story. She's acknowledging that there are other versions of the story available here. And all she has to do is say her side of the story, not the truth, not what really happened, not what went on. It's just, I want to tell my side of the story. And then she says, my federal charge is for lying to a federal officer. It is not for faking a kidnapping. Okay, so let's break this down again. This is classic criminal behavior. My federal charge is for lying to a federal officer. Well, you were charged with that. You were also found guilty of that, and you went to prison for that. You were jailed for that. You did time for that. So it wasn't just a charge. It was actually a guilty plea. In fact, she pled guilty to it, but she's downplaying the guilt, the fact that she was actually penalised for doing that, and she's just downplaying it just to being, I was charged with it, not I pled guilty to it at all. So my federal charge, downplaying, which is classic criminal behaviour when we talk about charges and so on. My federal charge is for lying to a federal officer. It is not for faking a kidnapping. Now, here we go. We get into the concept here of guilt, innocence, legal guilt, legal innocence, and so on. Just because you weren't charged with faking a kidnapping doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It doesn't mean you didn't fake a kidnapping, only that you were not charged for it. I don't actually know the legal ins and outs of it, but what she's doing here is classic downplaying. She carries on. And it's really important to understand that while there's narratives spinning out there, that I've changed the story, I've never changed the story. So let's break all that down. It's really important to understand. So this is convincing us. This is her saying, I'm very important. I know more than you, and I'm telling you, the interviewer, or you, the audience, what it is that's important to understand. Now, actually, we get to decide what's important to understand. Maybe law enforcement get to decide what's important to understand. Sherri only has a view on what's important to understand, but she's saying it right there as a big fact. It's really important to understand something, and that is classic manipulation behavior. When someone has those words in their arsenal, what's important for you to understand is the language of manipulation. And she says, while there's narratives spinning out there that I've changed the story, I've never changed the story. So again, we are not into the truth, and we're not into what is false. We're into stories, which are narratives. They are things that are not necessarily true. And she's not talking about the truth and what happened and the facts. She's talking about the story. So another indication here that she's been telling stories in the past, and she's still telling a story now. Now, I've highlighted the word never there. Never's a red flag for deception word. When you hear someone say they've never done something, or they would never do something, or they use never instead of no, like, so have you done that? Never, rather than saying no, it's a red flag. Potentially deception is happening there. It doesn't prove that someone's lying, but when you hear that word never, dig into what is being said all the way around it. And Sherri has just given me a classic textbook of why never is not a reliable phrase to use, because she says, I've never changed the story. If we just left it at that, we might get the impression that the story has been consistent all the time. But that word never would make me doubt it. And she carries on. I've never changed the story other than, therefore you have changed the story. The never is a lie there. I've never changed the story other than, a little bit of a laugh, the identity of the person that held me captive. Now, that is very material to the fact that you have changed your story because you said it was random strangers. So you materially have changed the story. That never is completely unreliable. And then we'll notice she's talking in conceptual terms, other than the identity of the person that held me captive. She's not naming the person that she now blames for it at all, a guy called James. She's talking in conceptual terms here, storytelling terms, if you like, almost like she's got a storyboard there of things rather than real life, real people involved in it. The identity of the person that held me captive. I've always maintained that I was held against my will and kidnapped and tortured. I've always maintained, once again, we just got all the tellings coming out here that she's still telling a story. Again, it's not about truth. It's not about facts. It's not about falsehoods and lies. Here she's talking about what she's maintained rather than what is the truth. So maintained is just what you say happened. I might maintain that I'm a millionaire. I'm not, but I could say I've always maintained I'm a millionaire. It doesn't make it true when you say maintained. So once again, an indicator that she's lying. So you can spot just in seconds, this is just 15 seconds of talking, that she has all the hallmarks of still telling a story. I've always maintained that I was held against my will and kidnapped and tortured. The details of that have never changed. Well, they have. The details of that have changed. Quite a lot. It was strangers kidnapping you and torturing you. Then it was someone you know. That's a huge material detail in that. And the details of that have never changed. And we've got that word never again, which again is unreliable because she has changed that. She says, I was just too afraid to come out with the identity of the person that held me captive. A couple of things here. We are going to see all the way through this, and I've only looked at 10 minutes worth of interview. I was just too afraid to come out with the identity, and she wants to paint herself as a frightened person in this. She will use words like afraid and scared all the way through this. I think it's something that she's prepared. She needs to for the story to make any sense as to why she didn't talk at the time, she needs to say that she was afraid to tell the truth. And so she will hit this hot button of being afraid or being scared a lot. So watch out for that one. I was just too afraid. She's got the word just there as well, by the way, another indicator of deception. So when you see just like never, dig in around and go, is there a lie being told here? And I think there is, because just here is minimizing. I was just too afraid. So this is all that was going on, is this afraid thing. So don't ask any wider questions. Don't go bigger. All that was happening, all I want you to focus on is where I'm comfortable here, which is saying, I was afraid. And in all this telling, she can get away with anything if she can make us believe that she was afraid, if she was scared. So that's what that just is doing there. Just focus on this. I was just too afraid to come out with the identity of the person. So once again, we got the person that held me captive. So it wasn't just the person, it was the whole nature that was there. So that's one question in. And already, what have I got? Look. The most important thing to her is image management. That's why we had all that manipulation stuff at the start. So when she said, well, I'm going to tell my priority, it was, I've just been charged. I've kept to the story all the time. Things haven't changed. So image management, how people perceive her, what impression she gives is the most important thing to her. It's what she started off with. I've got signs of controlling language there, what you have to understand, and talking about the charges rather than, what I have done, what I am guilty of. Controlling language there, the language of manipulation, and she's not committed to the truth, which is why she's talking in these conceptual terms about, I maintain this is what happened, and she's not giving lots of detail by saying the person changed. So question number one, I'm already saying this is all a lie. All the markers are in there in language. I have no fear of saying that at all. So let's go on and hear some more from Sherri.
So can you walk me through that day from your perspective, right when you first went out to go for the run?
So on November 2nd in 2016, I had made arrangements with my ex-boyfriend, the one that I had been secretly having an emotional affair with. It was getting to a point where things were getting a lot more serious, and I wanted to end the relationship. He wanted to do that in person. He wanted to continue talking. So he said that he wanted to come out into town and meet me in town. Things did not go according to plan. We were supposed to meet up in town with a friend present, and he ended up being at the end of my dirt road.
Did he know you were going for a run that morning?
Yeah. He had been frantically texting me all morning. The energy of it was super unusual. It went from just our casual texting to this very intense, pushy, aggressive text messaging. And in fact, I was really scared. It really concerned me. So I was trying to get my husband to come home and luring him in any way that I could to come home. And he didn't. He blew me off. And I was trying to avoid seeing him because he was so agitated. And there he was at the end of the dirt road because we'd been talking, so he knew my entire route. He knew where I was going to be and what I was doing.
So there we go. More markers of deception right there in that answer from Sherri. Annie says, so can you walk me through that day from your perspective, right when you first went out to go for the run? She doesn't take on that question at all. You just jumps around in timeline wise. So again, she's just getting across what's important to her rather than answering the question, because right now you've heard the answer to that question. Do you have an idea of what happened that day? Because that's what's asked. Walk me through that day. We don't really get that. We get Sherri saying, so on November the 2nd, 2016, so is just like a well. It's, I'm not going to answer your question. I'm going to just set some context. I'm actually not going to answer what's important to you and what you've done. I'm going to say what's important to me, what I want to get across. So on November the 2nd, 2016, I made arrangements with my ex-boyfriend. Now, remember I said it's much easier to tell the truth. So if we just go to the accepted version of what happened according to law enforcement, which is that Sherri wanted to get away. Sherri then spent some time with her ex-boyfriend. He came and picked her up and they went to his apartment. Then things like, I made arrangements with my ex-boyfriend, are truthful. So these are things that Sherri can hold on to because they actually happened, and talk about them without any stress, without any thought of lying. She doesn't have to have all the thoughts of the truth and lies bouncing around her head. She can just work as much of the truth into this story as possible, and it will come across as authentic and much more believable. So actually, November 2nd, 2016, I'd made arrangements with my ex-boyfriend, I believe is true. And I think she's going to say a lot of things that actually happened whilst embellishing a lot of things around them. So watch out for these things that actually happened. Now, she talks about her ex-boyfriend. She uses the term ex-boyfriend to describe him. But then she wants to say she was having an affair with this guy behind her husband's back. Well, if that's the case, you would not be referring to him as an ex-boyfriend, would you? That's not how you would describe someone that you were having an affair with. You would maybe put a name on the person. You would maybe say, you wouldn't label them ex-boyfriend, first of all. You'd be saying, I made arrangements with James, who I was seeing behind my husband's back, or the guy I was seeing behind my husband's back, or the guy I was having an affair with. You would not refer to him as an ex-boyfriend, making me think he was an ex-boyfriend at the time. They were not having an affair. So I made arrangements with my ex-boyfriend, the one that I had been secretly having an emotional affair with. Now, extra words that don't need to be there. The same meaning could have been conveyed without that word emotional. My ex-boyfriend, the one that I had been secretly having an affair with, would have the exact same meaning as the one I had secretly been having an emotional affair with. So why is that word emotional there? Is that because she wants to say it wasn't sexual, because she's wanting to get across an image of purity and not being a nasty person? So she just want to say it was an emotional affair. This was all about the emotions. My husband wasn't satisfying my emotions. This guy was, but we didn't cheat, as in sexually cheat. I think that's what it is. I think it's an image management term. So it was an emotional affair. It wasn't a sexual one. And it was getting to a point where things were getting a lot more serious, and I wanted to end the relationship. I noticed the double use of getting there. It was getting to a point where things were getting a lot more serious. Now, there's two gettings there. Things don't happen twice. It was getting to a point where it was more serious, or it was at a point where it was getting a lot more serious, but we've got two gettings going on there. So I don't, again, believe that. It's just not, it was getting a lot more serious. It was getting to a point where things were getting a lot more serious is not an authentic description of what was going on, I believe. Then she says, and I wanted to end the relationship. He wanted to do that in person. Now, that's interesting. He wanted to end the relationship. Who wanted to end the relationship? Because she says there, I wanted to end the relationship. And then it's he wanted to end the relationship just in person. I get the impression she wants to give. I told him I wanted to end the relationship. He wanted to have a conversation about it. But that's not what the words say. Again, her story is just not hanging together. He wanted to continue talking, so he said he wanted to come up into town and meet me in town. I think this is one of those true things, because as far as we know, this is exactly what happened. He wanted to continue talking, so he said he wanted to come up into town and meet me in town. All true and all believable. This is her doing that low stress thing of saying what really happened. He wanted to continue talking, so he said that he wanted to come up into town and meet me in town. You can see it's very believable, it's very straightforward, unlike the emotional affair, and it was getting to a point where it was getting serious, and I wanted to end it and he wanted to end it in person. What I do notice is there's a lot of going backwards to make the story make sense. So she starts off telling the story about she has to go, when she's asked about, on November the 2nd, 2016, I made arrangements with my ex-boyfriend. So she starts on that day. Then she goes backwards to say that we've been having a very emotional affair and it had been getting serious. So she's jumped away from November the 2nd. And then we're back in the 2nd about wanting to make those arrangements. And then he wanted to come to town. So she's jumping all around the timeline there instead of talking about, what happened on that day. She says things did not go according to plan. Now, I wonder if that one's true, because it's very straightforward. Things is a little bit downplaying, but things did not go according to plan. So they had a plan. And if you look at the legally accepted explanation of what happened, is that he came to town and picked her up to stage this abduction. Things did not go according to plan. So again, is that what happened? Because they had a plan. The plan wasn't that they were going to break up that day at all. Things did not go according to plan. And then she doesn't actually say what didn't go according to plan. So I wonder if on the day when they were staging the abduction, things didn't go to plan for some reason. We were supposed to meet up in town with a friend present, and he ended up being at the end of my dirt road. Again, I believe that. He ended up being at the end of my dirt road to pick her up, basically. The word ended up there, or the words ended up there, are the key ones, because when we're telling a story, if we use the phrase, and I ended up, or and he ended up, it's a jump in time. We're skipping things. We might use it for brevity when we're telling a story. So I might be, I went shopping for a new pair of shoes, but I ended up buying a car. Right, I'm not going to go through all the stages and shops I went to and so on to do that. That might just be for brevity. I went to buy new shoes. I ended up buying a new car. It's a jump in time, and that's what we've got here. She's covering some things up. She's not telling us why things did not go according to plan, if you know. So again, if things did not go according to plan is the truth, she's hiding why things didn't go to plan, and that's he ended up being at the end of my dirt road. And he asked the question, did he know you were going for a run that morning? And yeah, is the very first thing that Sherri says. Believable, straightforward. Yes, he did know I was going for a run that morning. And then he had been frantically texting me all morning. So I wonder again if we've got truth in there. He had been texting me all morning, because if you're going to fake an abduction, you may well have lots of texts that morning. He had been texting me all morning. Then she says the energy of it was super unusual. Strange way of saying it. Super unusual. Unusual's just odd. Super is exceedingly. It went from just our casual texting to this very intense, pushy, aggressive text messaging, which is very much of a big jump. Did something go wrong? Did someone get cold feet around the planned abduction or something like that? Just casual and then super intense, pushy, aggressive text messaging. But she doesn't say what caused it to happen or why it happened or anything like that. We're skipping over things again. And this was missing from the previous telling, because the previous telling was there he wanted to meet up in person, he wanted to come to town, things did not go according to plan, and he ended up at the end of my dirt road. Now we have this description of the casual texting all of a sudden becoming intense, pushy, and aggressive text messaging. And again, this doesn't really add up, because this was a conversation about them, in her telling, wanting to break up. So she's kind of gone, I want to break up. He's gone, I want to come through and talk about it. And then what she says happened that morning was casual texting. Well, are you going to be casually texting when the whole point of having a discussion is to break up? It went from just casual texting to this intense, aggressive text messaging. And then she says, in fact, I was really scared. It really concerned me. So what we have going on here is this repetition of how scared she was. I think this is something that gives her comfort in her storytelling, is she can explain most of the things that are a little bit inexplicable if she says she was scared. So I was really scared. It really concerned me. What really scared you? What really concerned you? So I was trying to get my husband to come home and luring him in any way I could to come home. So husband was being lured. This is the language, again, of manipulation and the language of control. She couldn't just phone up her husband and tell the truth, potentially because she was lying, but she couldn't just call up her husband and say, please come home, it's a real emergency. No, she had to lure him in any way that I could. So what she's letting us know there is this is a devious mind. This is someone who feels they need to lure people places. They need to manipulate them. So I was trying to luring him in any way that I could to come home, and he didn't. He blew me off. I think a little bit of resentment towards the husband comes through there, but we'll let that one pass because we've got bigger fish to fry. And I was trying to avoid seeing him because he was so agitated. And there he was at the end of the dirt road because we'd been talking. So he knew my entire route. He knew where I was going to be and what I was doing. There he was at the end of the dirt road because we'd been talking. I think the impression she wants to give is there he was at the end of my dirt road because we've been talking. Maybe that's because she's saying because I told him my running route. I mean, it doesn't sound like a casual conversation. Oh, here's the route that I'm taking. Also, it's the end of your dirt road. So he's actually turned up where you live. Did you tell him where you lived? So he knew my entire route. He knew where I was going to be and what I was doing. I believe that once again. Let's stage an abduction. So this is, I'm going to put on my running clothes. I'm going to go running on this route here. Come and pick me up somewhere on that. That is what I think may well have happened. I think, again, she's using the truth to smuggle as much deception in as possible. So there you go. Answer number 2, more language of control and manipulation from the soul at the start of the answer through to talking about luring the husband home. So much truth present. There were plans that day. He came to town. He was at the end of the dirt road. I believe all these things, the texting too. But so many deceptive markers when she speaks. Let's hear some more from Sherri on the Seriously podcast.
And what was it like when his car approached you? What happened? What did he say to you? Did he just get out? Did he shuffle you into the car? What happened?
I was really scared. It was alarming, when he pulled up because it wasn't the plan. We were supposed to meet into town. And when you think about, you're a female, when you think about seeing another man, you wouldn't be in jogging attire, no makeup and, a sports bra. You would get yourself ready and there would be a process to that. And it was terrifying. He wasn't supposed to be there. That's not what we had planned. In terms of getting in the vehicle, this is where my case gets really complicated. Have you watched the docuseries? Mm-hmm. Okay, so you hear a lot of people say it's reasonable to conclude that she got in the car. And that's true. It's reasonable to say that I would have gotten in the car, but there's no memory of that. It's also reasonable to say that I would have refused to get in the car. I have no memory of that. The only person that holds that piece is James. And he has an objective to not implicate himself as well. So it's highly unlikely we're ever going to get the truth of the story. But I have no memory of that. I remember getting up to the end of the dirt road and the phone dropping, and that's it.
Okay, this is the big one. Annie says, what was it like when his car approached you? What happened? What did he say to you? Did he just get out? Did he shuffle you into the car? What happened? And Sherri says, I was really scared. It was alarming. So the last thing that Annie has asked is, what happened? She wants process, she wants events, and Sherri's gone to emotions. I was really scared. It was alarming. So I think, again, she's got this comfort in saying she was scared, and it was alarming. When he pulled up, because it wasn't the plan, we were supposed to meet in town. Now, you'll notice that prior, he was at the end of the dirt road. She doesn't say he pulled up at the end of the dirt road, I don't think, but now he's pulled up there. So when you hear things that are inconsistent in storytelling like that, especially about things you should really remember, then what we have is inconsistency, potential deception going on there. She's hiding in that safety of scared and alarming when he pulled up because it wasn't the plan. We were supposed to meet in town. So once again, I believe this, because he's done something that wasn't the plan in this staged hoaxed abduction that they were doing. It wasn't the plan, and she keeps talking about the plan. So there was a plan that day. I believe that. It's just not the plan that she wants us to think about. It's the plan that we all know about. It wasn't the plan. We were supposed to meet in town. Believe that. And when you think about it, I mean, you're a female. When you think about seeing another man, you wouldn't be in jogging attire, no makeup, and, you know, a sports bra. You would get yourself ready, and there would be a process to that. So this is the language of manipulation. So she's trying to create a bond and a rapport with the interviewer. You're a female, so it's like, you know, you're going to get me here when I say this. She can't just state it, but she's talking about it being alarming and terrifying. And then what she's saying is, because I was in my running gear. Also, you know, this is where I need females in the comments. Is that how you approach life? That you are scared and alarmed because someone has seen you in your running gear? I know appearances are important to some people, but this is not the most scary thing, that a guy you've been having an emotional affair with and has been getting very serious sees you in your running gear. But we have the manipulation, because she says to Annie, you're a female, so I'm going to try and make you relate to this so that you can go, oh yeah, I get that. And then she talks about you wouldn't be in jogging attire, no makeup, and, you know, a sports bra. You would get yourself ready. So it's not what Sherri would do, it's what you, Annie, would do, isn't it? You're like this, you're like this, you're like this, I'm just like you. She doesn't talk about it from her perspective. She doesn't say, I was in jogging attire and, you know, I didn't like him seeing me like that. If I was going to meet him, I would get myself ready and there'd be a process to me doing that. She takes herself out of that entirely. And it's also, when you're seeing another man, you wouldn't be in jogging attire. So here she's just talking about, by the way, it's, you know, no slur on Annie, but it's like, oh, Annie, you know what it's like when you're having an affair and how you want to be dressed, which is a rotten way of treating someone. Hey, Annie, when you're seeing another man, this is how you act, isn't it? Sherri, the manipulator there. Again, when you're seeing another man, you wouldn't want to be like that. And it was terrifying. So we have, once more, this real comfort thing. It's really easy for her to say she was terrified. It's really important for her to get that across as well, which is why we have this repeat, 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 because so much of the stuff that she does only makes sense if she can say, I was reacting that way because I was terrified, because I was scared. And it was terrifying, you know, he wasn't supposed to be there. That's not what we had planned. So once again, the word plan comes through. There was a plan that morning. I believe there was a plan that morning. I also believe he wasn't supposed to be there. Potentially, she'd said, come and get me on the route, not at the end of this dirt trip. Then she says, in terms of the vehicle, this is where my case gets really complicated. Have you watched the docuseries? What's going on here is waffle. This is because I think she's not ready for a question about the vehicle yet. For some reason, she hasn't prepared this part mentally, and she wants to do some thinking inside her head to get the words correct that she wants to say, which is why we just get into this waffle. In terms of getting in the vehicle, this is where my case gets really complicated. It hasn't been complicated enough with all these plans going on and people appearing at the dirt track and being in your sports bra. No, now it gets complicated. Okay, so you hear a lot of people say it's reasonable to conclude she got in the car, and that's true. It's reasonable to say that I would have gotten in the car, but there's no memory of that. It's also reasonable to say that I would have refused to get in the car. Waffle does not help our understanding of what happened at all. Annie's asked a very straightforward question, which is, how did you get in the car? Did he put you in the car? Did you willingly get in the car? And we just have this waffle. You'll notice that she says, but there's no memory of that, which is talking about getting in the car. Not, I have no memory of that, with some ownership in the pronouns. It is just, there's no memory of that, which is, again, process driven. Right? Okay, I won't have any memory of that, so there's no memory of that. And that's when she's talking about having gotten in the car. It's reasonable to say I would have gotten in the car, but there's no memory of that. And it's reasonable to say I would have refused to get in the car. I have no memory of that. So she takes ownership of having no memory of refusing to get in the car, but she doesn't take ownership of just freely getting in the car. There's no memory of that. A giveaway, I think, that she got in the car willingly. And this is coming through there because she's claiming there's no memory of me getting in the car willingly, but I have no memory of of refusing to get in the car. You have no memory of that. You're taking ownership of that. Why? Because it didn't happen. Then she says, the only person that holds that piece is James. And, he has an objective not to implicate himself as well. He has an objective not to implicate himself as well. As well as who, Sherri? Who else could be implicated? Only you. Therefore, you know that this story, which you're saying is, so I was abducted, you cannot be implicated in a story if you were abducted. You're a victim. You can only be implicated if this story is not true. If this was a hoax abduction and James doesn't want to be implicated as well as me. It's a giveaway. It's just one of those little casual things that she just let slip. But this is very, very telling. He has an objective not to implicate himself as well as me, Sherri. She then says, so it's highly unlikely we're ever going to get the truth of this story. I believe that because you're lying. It's highly unlikely we're ever going to get the truth of this story. But I have no memory of that. Ownership there. I have no memory of that. I remember getting up to the end of the dirt road and the phone dropping, and that's it. So that's all I'm going to say. This is the end of this. I'm boxing it off with that phrase, that's it. Don't ask me any more questions. But for me, just the biggest part there is that and well. In that answer, she doesn't explain why it was terrifying, apart from the fact she was in her sports gear. A lot of waffle because the pressure is starting to rise now. We've got prepared stories and it's really easy to stick to them for a bit until a question knocks you off beam and all of a sudden you're panicking, and I think that's what's going on here. But loads more truth there, talking about the fact there were plans that day and plans that didn't quite go as they wanted them to go. So she is using a lot more truth. But that one, he doesn't want to implicate himself as well. It's the biggest telling me for all of that. Now, Sherri keeps talking. Like I said, I've only looked at 10 minutes of this interview, but there is so much in it. You're going to hear next from her about sex, about drugs, and more lies from Sherri Papini. Do you ever feel like you're not being told the full story? Very much like with Sherri there. Well, you're right. It's happening to you all the time. And I'm here to give you the key to seeing deeper, because this is about hearing the world with new ears. And I'm on a mission to share this with as many people as possible because it can be life-changing. So if you want to unlock the secret, then check out the archive, subscribe to this channel as well, follow it if that's what's important to you, and have a look at many more people telling lies to learn how to spot lies very easily just by the patterns and the words that people use when they talk. Do you know someone that needs this? Do you know someone who deserves to hear the truth? Are they always a little bit in the dark, or are they being fooled by someone? Then please help them. Hit the like button. That helps this get out to more people. Share it with them. Recommend this channel as well. Because every click on this episode, every single share fuels the fire. It allows me to dig deeper, to analyze further, and bring this life-changing skill to even more people. So go on, just press one button. Shall we get some more from Sherri Papini?
When did your memory then pick up again? Because it's a pretty long car ride from Northern California down here to Orange County.
Absolutely. I've never done drugs. I've never even been drunk before. And the feeling that I had was completely out of body. Like I felt very high. And so I woke up sporadically in the back of the car.
You were in the back seat of the car?
Back seat.
Was it a sedan, van?
I really don't remember.
Okay.
Woke up in the back sporadically. I was nauseous. It was really hard to keep my eyes open. And the next thing I knew, I was in Southern California and it was dark. So it was very clear that time had passed, and then I was in Southern California.
How long would you say that state of mind lasted, of going in and out and feeling like perhaps you were drugged or under the influence of something?
It's hard to recall, but I probably woke up maybe once or twice in the back seat, just kind of blinking your eyes and trying to stay awake.
Okay, the car journey. When did your memory pick up again? Because it's a pretty long car ride from Northern California down here to Orange County. Sherri's first word is absolutely. Absolutely, another red flag for deception word. Don't quite know why. People use it synonymously with yes, or sometimes use absolutely, like absolutely not. But when you hear the word absolutely, again, it doesn't prove a lie is being told. Dig in around what's being said because there's potentially deception there. She then says, I've never done drugs. I've never even been drunk before. Now, we've got that word never twice there. Never done drugs, never even been drunk before. Interesting. I've never done drugs. Has she done drugs? Well, she's already proved her use of never is kind of deceptive. Also, done drugs. When you've done drugs, that's you as a willing participant. I've done drugs. Not I've been drugged, and I've never even been drunk before. So that is in the present tense. I've never even been drunk before. What we've got going on here, I think, is just a lie. I think she has done drugs, and I think that she has been drunk before. She wants to say she's been drugged, but she doesn't say that. So that ride down to Orange County, what do you remember about it? I think I was drugged because I don't remember much about it at all. She has to, again, manage the image. I'm very good. I've never done drugs. I've never been drunk before. I do think that she potentially has done drugs. There's more language of that to suggest that. And the feeling that I had was completely out of body, like I felt very high. Now, very high is a word when used with drugs that is often used to talk about the good feeling, the positive feeling that comes with drugs. Oh, it was great. I was very high. Or, oh man, I was so high. It was amazing. So she doesn't say I felt very sluggish or drowsy or anything like that. She says I felt very high, and to use the word high around drugs again suggests that you have some knowledge of what taking drugs feels like, because it's not inexplicable, although she wants to say it's inexplicable. She says I felt very high, and so I woke up sporadically in the back of the car. Some words to pay attention to here. What do you think sporadically means on this long drive from Northern California to Orange County? What does sporadically mean? How often do you think that means she woke up? Have a think about that. Okay. And I woke up in the back of the car there. So she's talking about being in a car. Annie says, were you in the back seat of the car? Sherri says, back seat. She doesn't quibble. She just says, I was in the back seat. And then Annie says, was it a sedan or a van? And Sherri says, I really don't remember. Woke up in the back sporadically. I was nauseous. So what do we have going on here? I really don't remember. So it's not just I don't remember, it's really don't remember. So she's trying to persuade us that she really doesn't remember. Really is a needless word there. Was it a sedan or a van? I don't remember. I really don't remember. Both mean the exact same thing, but the word really has been put in there to persuade us. Why do people put in words to persuade us? Very often when it's not true and they really want to get their point across. So I really don't remember. Woke up in the back sporadically. I was nauseous. So she doesn't join herself there. She doesn't have a pronoun there. She doesn't say I woke up in the back sporadically. It's just woke up in the back, and it's moved from the back seat to the back, by the way, because obviously if you knew you were in the back seat, then that narrows down the sort of vehicle it was. If now all of a sudden if you were in the back, well good, you could be in the back of many more types of vehicle. So all of a sudden she's widening it from back seat to just being in the back. And we've got that word sporadically again. She woke up in the back sporadically. I was nauseous. So she diverts to explain why she can't answer, because she's asked some detail about this vehicle that she got in. She says, I don't remember. And then she diverts to talking about waking up in the back sporadically. I was nauseous. It's kind of like, get away from this subject of what kind of vehicle it was, because that's sensitive to her. And let's go over here again. I woke up sporadically. I was nauseous. Please feel sorry for me. Ask me about why I felt nauseous. Big diversion there. Some sensitivity caused by what type of vehicle was it? It was also really hard to keep my eyes open, and the next thing I knew, I was in Southern California and it was dark, so it was very clear that time had passed. So it was really hard to keep my eyes open. And the next thing I knew, I was in Southern California. Next thing I knew is one of those jumps in time. So again, taking my shoes to car example, I went shopping for shoes. Next thing I knew, I was buying a car, right? I'd be jumping over a lot of detail. Not deceptive, just brevity and conciseness is why I'm doing that. Here again, is that because she wants to just get across the fact I was out of it. So I was in the car, and the next thing I knew, I was in Southern California and it was dark. So it was very clear time had passed. But just look at this. The next thing I knew was I was in Southern California. Think about that. If you were asleep in the back of a vehicle, any kind of vehicle, or drowsy in the back of a vehicle, then how was the next thing you knew that you were in Southern California? The next thing you knew might be we'd arrived somewhere, we'd stopped, the door was opening, or he was shouting at me, wake up, we need to get out. But the next thing you knew, I was in Southern California. How did that happen? How did you know you were in Southern California? Because you said it was the next thing you knew. Could even be the car had stopped and it was dark. But the next thing I knew, I was in Southern California. I might give her some benefit of the doubt and say she's telling this with hindsight and she now knows where she was. But in her telling of the story, the next thing I knew is I was in Southern California and it was dark. Really? So it was very clear that time had passed, and then I was in Southern California. Very much like the getting earlier, she's arrived in Southern California twice. Again, an indication of a deceptive story when things happen twice. The next thing I knew, I was in Southern California, and it was dark, so some time had passed, and then I was in Southern California. Twice she's arrived in Southern California. Annie says, how long would you say that state of mind lasted, of going in and out and feeling like perhaps you were drugged or under the influence of something? Sherri says, it's hard to recall, but I probably woke up once or twice in the back seat. Oh, once or twice? Well, wait a minute. Twice before you've told us that you woke up in the back sporadically, and that you woke up sporadically in the back of the car. And now you're saying it might just have been once or twice? Is that sporadically? Woke up maybe once or twice in the back seat. And it was sporadically. So many markers. This again is a deceptive story. Once or twice, and this is again, she's moved to the back seat. She's changed from the back to the back seat. It's just kind of blinking my eyes open and trying to stay awake. So what is going on here? This story just doesn't hang together. So in this telling of how she got from where she is to James's place, she's lying. Let's get some more from Sherri.
Were you fully alert when you then were taken into his house?
I would not say fully alert.
Okay.
No. It was the weirdest feeling. It was very strange. It was like my feet couldn't connect to the pavement. It was a very odd sensation. Again, I'd never done drugs before. And he had to put a hand underneath me to help me walk into the house even.
And when you guys walked into the house, where did he walk you to directly, those first few moments?
Walked me into the house and sat me down on the couch.
And he says, were you fully alert when you were taken into his house? And Sherri says, I would not say fully alert. It was the weirdest feeling. So why tell us what you would not say? Why not tell us what actually happened? Were you fully alert? No, I wasn't fully alert. Yeah, I was fully alert. I would not say fully alert. It was the weirdest feeling. It was very strange. It was like my feet couldn't connect to the pavement. It was a very odd sense. And then she says, again, I've never done drugs before. Now, when liars are telling lies, they quite often like to point out how they've repeated themselves, how consistent they've been, how I've said this before, and that's what we've got here. Again, I'm going to tell you this again because I'm very consistent. Please believe my lie because I've said it many times, and the more often I say it, the more often I want you to believe it. Again, I'd never done drugs before. So, again, I'd never, got that word never there, and done drugs before. So again, we've got this consensual drug taking phrasing going on. I'd never done drugs before. Not I'd never been drugged before, or I think this is what it might feel like to take drugs. It's I'd never done drugs before. And he had to put his hand underneath me to help me walk into the house even. Annie says, and when you guys walked into the house, where did he walk you to directly those first few moments? And Sherri says, walked me into the house and sat me down on the couch. She doesn't say who walked her into the house. You notice there, the pronoun is missing. It's not he walked me into the house and sat me down on the couch. Also, just a little, being very pedantic here, but Annie's already said you've walked into the house. Where did you go? And Sherri walks into the house again, walked me into the house and sat me down on the couch. This could be an indicator that there is a pre-planned story, which is deceptive in Sherri's head. It's much harder when you've got a pre-planned story to just jump into the middle of that, which is what Annie's maybe done there by saying, when you were in the house, where did you go? Sherri's gone, all right, the only story I've got is walking into the house and going to the couch. So I'm going to start with the bit that I've got there. In this part here, though, I wonder, was there consensual drug taking going on that day? Because she's talking about never done drugs before. Was that the day when she done drugs? I think that's what could be happening there. Let's get some more from this interview.
So going back to when James walks you into the home, What is he saying to you in those moments? Is he communicating? Is he silent? What's happening? Because I would imagine you had a bunch of questions at that point.
I would like to say I had a bunch of questions, but I was mostly just frozen. I was terrified. I was not supposed to be there. That was not part of the deal. And where we had flirted here and there about like, oh, yeah, it'd be great to come and see you, there was no plan. So it was mostly just a frozen state of, oh my God, now I'm so far from home. I have no help. I don't feel well. I feel under the influence. What do I do? And James doesn't really say a whole lot. So there wasn't a lot of conversation. It was just a lot of scare. I was really scared.
Okay, so many of Sherri's favourite talking points there. And he says, okay, so going back to when James walks you into the house, what is he saying to you in those moments? Is he communicating? Is he silent? What's happening? Because I would imagine you had a bunch of questions at that point. This catches Sherri well off guard. She's not prepared for this. Why are you not prepared for this? If this is what happened, then you would just have the facts to tell. You would have events to relay. And instead, we get, I would like to say I had a bunch of questions, but I was mostly just frozen. So mostly just frozen. Let's break all that down. So mostly just frozen. So not completely frozen. There was something else going on there. And just, we've got that word just again, i.e., oh, right. Yeah. Annie's right. When I arrive, when I get to his house, I should have asked him what was going on, or should have prepared for me going, what the hell am I doing here? And have those sort of things ready. But no, I was just frozen. Focusing on that. I told you, when deception is happening, the word just is very close so often. I was terrified. This is the comfort thing again of saying how scared you were. So the fact you didn't ask questions, the fact you're not ready for to tell us what this conversation was, doesn't make a lot of sense. It really doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you can pull out the fear card and say I was terrified, then are you asking us to make allowances? Oh yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. You didn't ask what was going up, or he didn't tell you what was going on, unless you were terrified and then you were just frozen. She says I was not supposed to be there. Now, this is the truth again. You weren't supposed to be there. You were supposed to be with your husband and kids. And I know you have explained that before when you were telling the story of your first fake abduction story. You wanted to be with your husband and kids. I wasn't supposed to be where I was. I believe that. That is believable. I was not supposed to be there. You'll notice the things I believe. I was not supposed to be there. Very straightforward. No extra words in there. None of this persuasion going on. Nothing that I question there. It's just really straightforward. I was not supposed to be there. That was not part of the deal. What deal? That was not part of the deal. And where we had flirted here and there about like, it'd be great to come and see you, there was no plan. I'm sorry, what? You were going to break up with the guy that day in your telling of the story. So if you were going to break up with the guy, you shouldn't have been flirting, and you should have not have ended up at his house, miles and miles away from your own house. So why are you talking about flirting? And if you've been abducted, if you're being held against your will, why is flirting something that you're talking about in the telling of this story? It'd be great to come and see you, but there was no plan. The plan, as you tell it, was to break up. I think the plan was to go to his house, but that's just really very strange wording. You can see she's off balance because she hasn't got a prepared answer, a prepared deceptive answer to this question. Therefore, a lot of stuff's coming out and we have that leakage. There was no plan. So it was mostly just a frozen state of, oh my God, now I'm so far from home. We've got mostly again, we've got just again, i.e. more was going on, but don't ask me about it. A frozen state of, oh my God, now I'm so far from home. I believe that. She's gone to the safety of the truth. I'm so far from home. I have no help. I don't feel well. I feel under the influence. Well, how do you know you feel under the influence? Because, you've never done drugs before. You've never been drunk before. I feel under the influence. You'll notice this is all in the present tense as well. It was mostly just a frozen state of, oh my God, now I'm so far from home. So that's the past tense. It was mostly. And then it is, I have no help. I don't feel well, present tense. I feel under the influence. What do I do? And what do I do? I think, is the sort of question. What do I do? And James doesn't really say a whole lot, so there wasn't a lot of conversation. Well, is this still in the present tense? James doesn't really say a whole lot, or is that talking about James's personality, that he's a quiet guy? James doesn't say a whole lot, so there wasn't a lot of conversation. Well, certainly he doesn't seem a quiet guy in the earlier parts of this story, because We'd been talking is what she said. So James was talking then. We were sending all these casual texts. So he was saying a whole lot then. And also James wanted to talk about breaking up. So she's changed her description of James from being a very talkative guy who wanted to talk, who sent casual texts. We'd been talking, so he knew my running route. And now James doesn't say a whole lot. It really doesn't hang together. It was just a lot of scare, she finishes with. I was really scared. So here, she doesn't answer the question. The question is, what was the conversation when you got in the house? What did he say to you? What did you say to him? She is not prepared for this. And she shows all the indicators of lying in there. Words like just, things that don't hang together, things that look like leakage of the truth around flirting and so on there. Do you want one last bit from Sherri? Let's do it.
Do you think that the reason he abducted you was because he thought that he was helping you, or because he wanted to be with you and he didn't want anybody else to get in the way of that?
I think probably a little bit of both.
And if he thought that you were consenting to that and that you wanted to be with him as well, or that you were leaving an abusive or dangerous situation, why do you feel that he would feel the need to put you under the influence or potentially drug you?
Good point. James has a really sick mind. He's a very sick-minded person. In my opinion, I think he struggles with quite a lot of mental illness. In my opinion, when we look at the evidence, when we look at the behavior, when we look at the pattern of behavior, there's a sadism there, and there's a really sick-minded person there. So it's difficult for me to try and surmise what he was thinking. I was just terrified of him at that point. Aside from the abduction and this incident, what makes you believe that there's mental illness at play, or an element, as you put it, as sadism? To do the harm to my body that he did without consent. It's one thing to be in that community and to be into that, but there has to be permission. And there was not consent, and there was not permission. Okay.
So Annie says, if he thought that you were consenting to that, and that you wanted to be with him as well, or that you were leaving an abusive and dangerous situation, why did you feel that he would need to put you under the influence and potentially drug you? Sherri says, good point, because it is a good point. James has a really sick mind. He's a very sick-minded person. She says, in my opinion, I think he struggles with quite a lot of mental illness, in my opinion. So she's used the phrase, in my opinion, twice. A very legal term. It keeps you very, very safe. In my opinion, Sherri is lying. I'm allowed my opinion. In my opinion, I think he struggles quite a lot with quite a lot of mental illness. So I think she's covering herself legally there. She's written a book. She may well have been advised that you can't write in the book that he does do these things. You've got to say it's your opinion. When we look at the evidence, when we look at the behavior, when we look at the pattern of behavior, there's a sadism there. She's not talking about herself there. There's a we. Who's the we that's looking at this evidence? She doesn't say, we don't know, but it's not. When I look at the evidence, when I look at the behavior, when I look at the pattern of behavior, it's we. So she's acting in concert with someone there. There's a really sick-minded person there. You'll notice that James disappears. So in my opinion, I think he struggles with quite a lot of mental illness. So that is he, talking directly about James. And then when we look at the behavior, of who, when we look at the evidence of who or what evidence, when we look at the pattern of behavior with who, there's a sadism there, where, and there's a really sick-minded person there. But James has just sort of disappeared there in that paragraph. I think he struggles with a lot of mental illness, so he's present there and then he disappears. In my opinion, when we look at the evidence, when we look at the behavior, when we look at the pattern of behavior, there's a sadism there. There's a really sick-minded person there. James just disappears. So it's difficult for me to try and surmise what he was thinking. I was just terrified of him at that point. So she attacks here. She really does attack here. It's not very credible because James disappears. She attacks, no answer to the question. She returns to the safety of her prepared. I was terrified there as well. But listen, it doesn't take a lot for me to think that there's a sick-minded person there. Isn't referring to James. There is a sick-minded person somewhere in this story. I don't think it's James. And he says, aside from the abduction in this incident, what makes you believe there's a mental illness at play or an element of, you put it as sadism? Sherri says, to do the harm to my body that he did, without consent. It's one thing to be in the community and be into that, but there has to be permission, and there was not consent and there was not permission. She doesn't answer the question again. James disappears again. To do the harm to my body that he did without consent. It's one thing to be in the community and be into that. James is not there. But there has to be permission. James is not there. It's not James didn't have permission. And there was not consent and there was not permission. James has just disappeared again. Bit of distancing. To do the harm to my body, so not the harm to me, that he did without consent. Then again, I wondered, has she taken drugs before, and was she part of that? She introduces a consensual community, this time in a sexual way, around, sadism and so on. It's one thing to be in that community and be into that, but there has to be permission. I'm wondering what knowledge she has of that community for her to be able to talk about it and for it to be present in her mind. Because what's happened in her telling of the story is someone has tortured me and left lasting marks on me, and it was bloody horrible. There was no permission, no consent, but instead she's gone to this community where there is permission and consent for those things to happen inside it. So why does she go there with that? I think she's lived, I can't think of a better word than a more alternative lifestyle than she would like us to believe in this interview. And Annie finishes with an okay, which I will come back to. So there we go. Sherri Papini, like 10 minutes of that interview. So what have I got in conclusions? She's not telling the truth. She is not telling the truth. Too many indicators of lies for that. She has prepared a story that is a majority of the truth. James came up. There was a plan. He took me to his apartment loads and loads of miles away. But there's so many other embellishments in it. And when she is asked a question that she doesn't have a prepared answer for, she is caught out. She does not have that angle to tell. And it's blatantly obvious. So Sherri's new story, baloney, all lies. Before we wrap up, can we just give all the kudos to Annie for showing that I don't think she believed the answer to that last question. Just have a look at how she deals with the word okay here.
To do the harm to my body that he did without consent. It's one thing to be in that community and to be into that, but there has to be permission. And there was not consent and there was not permission.
Okay.
A classic. What do you think? Do let me know in the comments if you can. Don't forget, go to the website neveratruerword.com, where you'll find a hell of a lot more about Sherri Papini and other classic liars, and learn how to spot the truth, how to spot deception, and how to spot the language of manipulation and the motivations of a person as well. It's neveratruerword.com, and we'll see you soon for something new from Never a Truer Word.